Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Tampa Bay Real Producers Podcast. This, of course, is the podcast that is made for real producers, by real producers, and with none other than Tampa Bay's real producers, also powered by Top Producers Nation, where we help agents all over the country reach their desire, become a top producer in their desired markets. And you can check it out more at topproducersnation.com and learn about how we do that through our courses and our coaching, as well as our community base at Top Producers Nation. Today, we have Lorette Vosloo. How are you, Lorette?
I'm doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It's good to have you here on the show for sure. You guys are going to be seeing Lorette. You probably haven't seen this yet, but Lorette was interviewed and we're locked and loaded for the Rising Star feature in our September 2024 issue of Tampa Bay Real Producers. So we were just taking a quick look at the actual proof, and it looks great. And so we're excited to have you come out here within a couple of weeks. I guess that'll probably drop, what is it today, August 9th? So that should come out like between the 20th to the 26th of this month. And Lorette will be in our September issue. So excited to have you in that for sure.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's start a little bit with just your background for people who don't know your story yet, and hopefully we'll read more about it in the upcoming issue. But did you grow up in Tampa? If not, how did you find your way here, and what were you doing before you got into real estate?
So I am actually originally from South Africa.
Okay. That's the accent there. Okay.
Just a little bit,
I was trying to put my finger on it. Yes.
Came to the U.S. in 1993 with my husband, our 3-year-old son.
Nice.
$1,000 and 6 pieces of luggage. I'm an occupational therapist by training.
Okay.
And during that time, the U.S. were in need of skilled therapists. Mm-hmm. So they were recruiting abroad. And we decided to jump in and take an opportunity that we believe was presented to us for reasons. South Africa was a little bit in turmoil, and we had a responsibility of raising a child.
Yeah.
So we came here. I was in healthcare for 30 years, and my passion has always just been taking care of people, mm-hmm. and especially in the U.S., it became more seniors. Yeah. I was always in the senior industry, and while I was working in healthcare. I worked in outpatient therapy, home health, skilled nursing, all kind of different settings, but always with the seniors. So during COVID, I just decided it was time to take a different route. And,
what was the motivation behind that?
Just really with the corporate world, the focus switched so much over years. Yeah. From taking you away from direct patient care and mm-hmm. being able to care for the patient, but it was always bottom line driven, which I understand. Businesses need to make those decisions.
Yeah. But that's not why you were in the business.
That's not where my heart is. My heart is taking care of people. Yeah. And I just felt that was getting further and further away. Mm-hmm. And I think it was just an opportunity where I decided, let's just do it and try. I've always loved real estate, always loved... I had a little interior decorating business with my best friend years ago. Okay. It's just something I've always loved. So I figured,
Did you ever think you'd get a license, or was that always kind of in the back of the head, or?
Not really. Yeah. It was something that I just loved, like a hobby. Sure. Always picking up the magazines, looking at things. Mm-hmm. Remember the old days where you could pick up a magazine and look at it? I do,
especially on the airplanes, flying from city to city. Yes.
So it was just always a high interest. And it just made a lot of sense to me when I started researching, realizing that you could actually specialize in servicing the seniors in real estate. Mm-hmm. And become a senior real estate specialist. Yeah. So to me, cool. It's almost just taking that passion.
You had a built-in niche there for sure.
Yes, just taking the passion and, kind of funneling it a different way.
So you got licensed in 2020, you said?
December 2020, I took my licensing exam.
Yep.
And I started January the 2nd, 2021.
So you mentioned earlier that you also had, whether it was a hobby or something you actually put a lot of full-time focus into, you had this interior design business. So technically becoming an agent wasn't like your first experience as an entrepreneur, it sounds like, right? You had a little bit of experience of what it was like to run a business, I guess, because being in the healthcare, space all those years, you were, I'm assuming, an employee, and that's just a different status, different mindset, I would think, in general, in terms of going from that to having to now build up a commission-based business. And was that a shock at all for you, or do you feel like you were prepared for it?
Well, go back a little bit in my healthcare. I actually had a very, very, very dear friend of mine. I was initially working for corporations.
Okay.
Then I started working with an amazing entrepreneur that she started a healthcare company.
Okay.
It was outpatient therapy, and it just grew into a multi-million-dollar company.
Gotcha.
So she really inspired me a lot when you think about that entrepreneurship. I learned so much from her. Like, how do you plan? How do you execute? And a lot of it is just really building relationships. The only way
Just like any other business, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So really that background in combination of like my little side gig with my friend was, I think putting those together with passion really kind of was an easy transition.
That makes sense. And so when you got into, well, even before we dive into real estate, I just want to touch a little bit more on your experience growing up. You said in South Africa, right? So you met your husband there?
Correct.
Okay. And so were you growing up there, did you experience a lot of that turmoil and stuff that was happening as far as the political, environment and a lot of the violence even that was happening in South Africa? Was that something you had to deal with day to day, or was that kind of away from your experience?
I would say that we were aware of it.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, the big thing that happened that really pushed us to make the decision, because we kept on getting this opportunity presented to be able to venture out and come to the U.S. But there was an assassination of a big political leader.
Sure.
And he was black. So there was this big movement because they were doing funerals in different cities. And where we lived, my husband had to drive into Johannesburg to go work.
Okay.
And there were riots like crazy. He called me when he got to work. This was before cell phones. He called me. And
you said you left there in 93, is that right?
93,
Okay.
yeah.
And Nelson Mandela years were right around there, weren't they?
After that.
It was after
right
that.
After that. That's
Okay.
right around the time that he was going to get released.
Okay.
And my husband called me and he said, I drove on the way to work. On the sidewalks, they were barbed wire to keep riots from going into, breaking into the storefronts.
Yeah.
And he was a good almost an hour away from where I was sitting at home with my son at that point, because they closed the school. I was working in the school system then. And I just remember the fear of being far away from him.
Sure.
And then furthermore, two roads away from where we lived, the marches were going to the rugby stadiums for this funeral. And it was not the actual funeral. They were just gathering. And, you could hear them chanting through the streets.
Yeah.
Sitting locked up in my house, hearing that, feeling those emotions, being far away from my husband and my family.
It can be frightening.
It was frightening.
Yeah.
It really was. And when he got home from work that night, I looked at him, I said, why? We have this opportunity. It was an extremely hard decision because our whole families were there.
Yeah. Is most of your family still there now?
Yes, my family, my mom is still there. My dad passed, and my sister with her family is still there.
Okay.
My husband's brother is in Johannesburg, but his sister is in Vancouver.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just.
Did your husband also grow up there?
Yes.
Okay.
He's from Johannesburg.
Okay. Have you gone back, since often, or what's your connection to it now?
We go back as often as we can.
Yeah.
If you have not been,
I have not. It's on my list, though.
You gotta have it on your bucket
definitely
list.
something I want to go check out.
Oh my goodness, it is one of the most beautiful countries.
Yeah.
And it is 1.5 times the size of Texas.
Okay.
So it's not a huge country.
Sure.
But it's got all the
Texas
beauty.
is a pretty big state. So.
Exactly.
I definitely want to go check it out sometime.
Yeah.
I've had it on my list for a while.
If you honestly take all the beauty you have in this country of ours and you put it in a country 1.5 times the size of Texas, that's what you have. You've got the beaches, you've got the mountains, you've got, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah. The weather, is it similar to like a tropical style
No, actually, there's 4 very distinct seasons.
Is there? Okay.
And
I grew up in Connecticut, so I mean, I'm used to the 4 seasons up there as well.
Yeah, very distinct. But the one thing people are very surprised is in the most southern, it's the most southern part of Africa.
Yeah.
But on the beaches, there are actually penguins.
Oh, really? Wow. So you do get all the different dynamics,
yep.
huh?
So it's that cold.
And then great white sharks in the ocean, huh?
Exactly. And then you've got
that's
the big
why
5.
they like the penguins. They go where the penguins are, right?
Right.
Well, that's neat. I definitely want to check it out at some point. And I guess the environment there now, is it pretty safe? Is it? Do you feel any issues at all now when you go, or is it you're pretty comfortable there?
No, the way I explain it to people, it's just like everywhere else.
Yeah.
There's going to be
pockets,
safe areas,
right.
and there's going to be areas that you should not go.
Sure.
But I've got several friends that have gone back and visited in the last year or so, and everybody that goes just can't stop talking about it.
Yeah.
We went last year. My mom turned 80, and we went for her 80th birthday and had
Happy birthday, moms. That's a big one.
It was a fabulous time. And you know what? When you go, we should move back.
Have you ever done real estate there at all?
Well, I actually facilitated with the help of my wonderful sister, the sale of my mom's home there.
Okay.
Very different.
Do you have to be licensed as an agent to do that there?
Yes.
You do. Okay. Because some countries, we had somebody else on the show who does some real estate in Italy, and he was like, you don't even need to have a license there to be able to You're basically like a real estate consultant, and anybody can do it pretty much. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So it's a little different, but it sounds similar to what it is here down in South Africa.
Yeah, it's in a way similar, but there's definitely different practices than what we're used to in Florida.
Sure. Okay. So let's go back to your story of you got yourself licensed in 2020. Was that with Coldwell Banker at the time?
No, I started with a different company.
Okay.
For a very brief period of time.
Yep.
Then I was with a boutique brokerage.
Okay.
They got bought out by a larger company. And I just didn't feel that I was aligning with the values of the larger company.
Yep. Did you find your home now, you think?
I have.
Yes.
I really do love Coldwell.
So what was your first year like? If you were to describe your first full year in real estate, was it something where you committed full time from day one, or did that evolve into something, or did you have a lot of challenges getting that initial traction? It sounds like with your network and the senior, spaces that you've worked in, was that kind of your immediate sphere to focus on from a real estate standpoint, or did you start somewhere else?
So to answer the first part of your question, there was no part-time. This is an all or nothing. This was all or nothing.
That's the way to do it. That's the mentality to have.
I truly
That's how the
believe
champions think there, Lorette.
Rip the Band-Aid off and just go for it.
I agree.
And failure has never been an option for me.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to do what it took. Initially, it started off really with my sphere. The people that I've known and that I had the relationships with. And then I slowly transitioned. I would say by the mid of the first year, I transitioned more into focusing. I had to build up my skills and my knowledge first from the real estate side. Because people, this is a big decision.
Sure.
When you do this, and there's a lot involved from a financial standpoint, from an emotional standpoint.
For sure.
And to me, you can't mess with people when
No
it
doubt.
comes to that. So I wanted to make sure that I had.
And they have
all
to trust their agent. They have to really feel like you're out for their best interests.
Absolutely, and you got to know where to find your resources.
For sure. Yeah.
So I took the first 6 months just focusing on my direct referrals, the people I know, love, and trust. And then after I got my knowledge base established, that's when I started focusing more on my seniors.
Okay. And so I'd like to dig into that a little bit, because I think it's when we interview a lot of the top producers on the show, the importance of having a specific niche that they serve, I think, comes up a lot, right? It's a common element for people who kind of know that they want to be the big fish in a small pond, and they know who they really want to serve. And I think there's a certain step there of identifying who that is. And some people have a hard time figuring that out. They want to just serve everybody, right? And then I don't think that strategy works as well as knowing, who my target is and how I'm going to serve them to the highest capabilities. And It sounds like with your background and your real estate success, you've been able to do that specifically in the senior community. So let's talk a little bit about what you've learned, or what you feel like are some best practices in serving that niche specifically, whether it's attracting, serving them, different needs maybe that they have that another person might not, general public. Are there some distinctions there that you feel like you've learned and that's helped you over the last few years?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is that you touched on is finding your niche. And I don't think you need to try and replicate anybody else. You need to, number one, identify where your passion is. Because if you follow your passion, you will find the right niche. For instance, I know that I'm not a conflict person, so I will never work with divorcees because I don't like the conflict management of things.
Some other people might thrive in that, right?
Exactly. So I think that's the number one thing with the niche is finding your passion and following that. And then what is so different with the seniors is, I work a lot with them where they transition from their home that they've lived in for 20, 30 years into a retirement community, which I'm going from a 3,500 square foot home to a 900 square foot place. And I've got all these wonderful collections and belongings that I have that has a lot of sentimental value to me and a lot of times that I got to give up. And where do I start?
A lot of memories there too. So that's even more emotional because the longer you're in a home, the more memories are attached to it,
Exactly. And unfortunately,
especially if you had a family there and you had your kids grow up there.
Right. And then you've got, when you think about it, your kids are grown up. They've got their own families. They've got their own household set up. They don't have a need for the items that you have grown attached to.
Right.
And they don't have room for it. So where do you go with all of that? So that's a big thing, is that separation, physically separating, but then that emotional separation, giving up independence, giving up their ability to, control a lot of things. And I think there's such a misconception out there about what retirement living looks like. I think
let's pop some of those misconceptions. What do you think some of them are?
It's a place where you go to wait and die.
Honestly, that's an ugly way to put it.
It really is. But I think that's a lot of people look at it when you look at nursing homes.
Right.
They look at retirement living as a nursing home, place where there's nothing to do. You're going to sit there and...
But it's really not at all.
Oh my gosh.
Not in the good ones.
No.
They're always doing something. There's always all kinds of stuff to stay busy.
Honestly, Don, if I could move into one of those places today, it's amazing.
That's right.
And that's kind of, the process, working through that with them to say, while you can make that decision yourself, make it. Because otherwise someone else is going to have to make that for you. And you may be going to end up somewhere where you don't want to be. And to your point, it's like cruise ship living on land. A lot of them. And everything is done for you. And you work so hard your whole life. Now is the time to relax and enjoy the fruits of your labor.
And they love those shuffleboard courts over there at the community centers.
The line dancing, you can
they have a
start
blast.
taking art classes. There's so much you can do. But then also there's cases where it's people making those conscious decisions, which is fantastic that they're doing that, because I always have to compliment them on taking ownership of your life and making that decision. But then you do run into situations where they waited too long. Maybe dementia has set in. So you're also dealing with that, the anger. So being able to understand if there are certain diagnoses involved, how do I manage that? And I think that's where my healthcare background helps.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You would have to, that experience must be invaluable then in terms of when those situations arise. And you're also, I'm assuming, dealing with the kids a lot of times too, right?
Yes.
Because they hopefully want to help, right? Mom and dad, or they're not just like completely hands off to the situation. I would hope if their parents are in a scenario where they're elderly and they know that they might make sure they're not taken advantage of, or whatever the case may be. So there's almost like an extra layer of like relationships that you have to manage too in that process, right?
Absolutely. And my goal when I work with my clients and with their families, I always want the parents and the children to continue to have the relationship as parents and children. And when it comes to making those hard decisions on, Mom, you cannot take that old ugly black chair to the community where you're moving. Let me handle that with Mom. You take Mom to breakfast. You go enjoy life. Continue to enjoy your
I'll
moments.
be the bad guy.
I'll be the bad guy. And we'll get through it,
Right.
you know? And I think that but to your point is I got to build that trust and relationship, not just with my client, but also with their families.
No doubt.
Because often they're out of state. So they've got to trust the person that is, again, managing this process for their loved one, but also dealing with the largest asset that they're liquidating at this point so they can take care of themselves for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, no, I could see there's a lot of moving parts there, and having that, and that's why positioning yourself with your background. You're mentioning you were an occupational therapist. I'm assuming those skills probably come into play too.
Oh yeah,
just that ability to be a great listener and really, I can tell just from communicating with you, like you have a presence about you where you seem very genuine and very authentic with your ability to connect. So I could see why somebody would trust you pretty quickly, right? And learn how to hopefully, build that empathy is how I would put it, where they feel like you're really in it for the right reasons. You're there to help them.
No, thank you. And that is honestly, that is how I am.
Yeah.
Because I love what I do, and I feel I create family with every person that I interact with. And often I am the only person they have.
Yeah. That's part of it too, I guess. There's even, we go, the church I go to, our pastor sometimes will tell us stories about how when he's seen elderly situations where like the kids are not local necessarily, and they are almost like completely distant from the relationship, right, with their parents, and it's just sad sometimes to hear that how lonely the parents are, because the kids are just so, for whatever reason, don't have any compassion or empathy towards their own parents in some cases. Now I don't know how true, if you experienced any of that as well, or if generally you find that the kids want to be involved in that process and your experience has been more on that side, but it's I can't really speak to it from experience myself, but I hear some of those different stories from my pastor, like I said, and some others as well. I was curious about like what percentage of your business comes in this niche on the senior side nowadays. Is it pretty much all of it? Is it like 50-50? How does that look today?
I would say my senior focused business is probably 75% of my business.
So it's definitely a majority.
Because you also have to remember, when I talk about seniors, I'm talking about myself as well.
Oh, you don't look it. You don't look it, Lorette.
Because it's 50 and older.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Well,
I was going to say that too. Like, and even downsizing is a big part of that too, right? Just empty nesters now that have their kids off to college for the first time. They might not go into a senior living facility necessarily, but maybe they have a pretty big home and they just don't need the size anymore. Right. So it's, there's a lot of beautiful towers now in downtown St. Pete as an example, or they just want to, downsize somewhere. Right. So that's another step or strategy, I guess, that I'm assuming you would be dealing with a lot, right?
And there, I think this is where my healthcare background comes in. When I take you as someone that is, 50 and older to make that lifestyle change, and the research term I prefer to use instead of downsizing is right-sizing our lives. I'm not going to recommend that you necessarily buy a townhouse.
Okay.
Because you're not getting younger. I know I'm not. So buying a townhouse at the age of 60, 65, you're now going to deal with stairs, especially if the primary suite's downstairs. Let's think about long term. Also, are the bathrooms accessible that if you need to get a hip replacement or a knee replacement, can you get in and out of that shower?
Yeah.
So
you got to think about these things.
That's all the crazy stuff that goes on in my head.
Sure.
That I wear all my different hats from past experiences.
Yeah. So your recommendation is for someone to look more for a senior kind of community, even in that phase, right? Say early 50s, mid 50s, or
villas,
or just a one floor villa type thing.
Yes, villas. Because I do some work in on top of the world, which everybody knows. It's a pretty large 55 and older community, and I even find that some people that maybe in their 50s bought something on the second floor is now searching for something on the ground floor because Well, the elevator breaks down. How do you get upstairs with all your groceries or, those type of things? So these are just things that I think is important to know and think about as you navigate through the process.
Makes a lot of sense. Does most of your clientele and any sort of prospecting, does it just come mostly word of mouth through serving the community, or do you do anything intentionally to try to market, or is there a strategy behind how you try to attract specifically that niche?
I'm very passionate about education, and I always tell any person in life, rather make a decision a year too early than one day too late. So, but people can only make decisions based on the knowledge they have. So I do some educational seminars throughout the community.
That's cool. I love that.
I'm teamed up with a lot of the senior communities where I do education with them, just one-on-one marketing, following up, involved with senior communities. So just really connecting with people in churches, different things that, like I said, knowledge is power.
For sure. I think that's really smart. People seem to respond better to just at the education side and learning than to being pitched anything. So if you can start with that and add value first, I know that's a philosophy we try to start with too, even with our platform. It definitely makes a big difference, I believe, in how you are viewed and positioned,
Agreed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How many different senior living facilities do you generally have those types of relationships with? Is it a pretty good amount? Is there a couple specific ones?
I probably have a good handful that I have very close relationships with.
Where you'll do these educational seminars and stuff?
Correct.
Yeah. How often is that? Once a quarter, once a month?
Depending on what kind of the season. We do it seasonally, but I would say twice a year per community is a good average.
And when you do something like that, is there a specific kind of keynote message that you've adopted that you generally deliver, or is it always different as far as what you tend to talk about and focus on?
I try and kind of change it up a little bit because often the same people do attend.
Sure.
The one thing that's consistent is what's going on in the market.
Okay.
Because everybody wants to know.
I don't care how old you are. You always want to know what the market's doing, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Where are my property values at? Yeah.
Right. So that's always important to know, and I always take my crystal ball out because then I know exactly what's going on in the market and can predict it, right? So just giving people an update on what's currently happening and what to expect, especially, knowing that right now, for instance, we're looking at days on market that's kind of grown a little bit. Inventory has grown. So it's going to take longer for your property to sell. So if you're looking at making a decision in 6 months to move, you probably need to start making plans today.
Yeah.
And then I typically start touching on things like, where do we start? If you're thinking about moving in a year, do you need to start looking at decluttering and kind of reorganizing and really figuring out what are you using and not? And I think one of my favorite things to recommend is, I would say, I'm going to do your Christmas shopping for you right now. Go into your house and look at items you have that either your children or your grandchildren has told you, I love that piece. Take that piece and give it to that person for Christmas or for their birthday, and you can see them enjoying that piece while you're around.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting, and then when you move, you got to move it too.
Yeah.
Unless they have a very specific emotional attachment to it. See someone else enjoy it now. And
that makes a lot of sense.
That's part of the process, and just taking that one step at a time.
For sure.
Then it's less overwhelming when you need to make those big decisions.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I like that. I was curious too, in terms of being that we're in Florida, and this is for many people, when they retire anywhere in the country, they end up in Florida, right? It seems like that's been for many decades the plan. Have you experienced that where you have some sort of a network where you're bringing a lot of out-of-state people that are moving down here for the first time, and being that you kind of are specialized in that age demographic, has that been a source of business for you as well at all?
Not as much as I would like it to be. That is one of my goals for this year, is to really focus on that more. I've really just connected with agents from different states to at least educate them, and some of the networking that I've done.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably some intentional marketing strategies that you can adopt or dive into that would maybe target those types of audiences, or figuring out a way for you to identify what does that market look like, and at what age are they looking to retire, or maybe even figuring out like, these people just retired, so they're more likely to want to move. Like, I'm sure there's all kinds nowadays. With technology, you can figure out everything, So I'm sure there are some strategies that can be doing that. I wrote down too, like, just a question revolving around, do you find yourself getting involved with like probate situations at all, and dealing with probates, and then helping with estate sales and all of that side of things? Is that something you've had experience with?
So probate, not as much, but my philosophy is, especially if I connect, when I connect with my seniors, or I connect with the family members, I'm your one-stop shop. Come to me, because I am teamed up with very trustworthy and reliable resources that can help, from doing the estate sales, to the clean outs, to handyman, to whatever needs to be done to get that house show ready, but also to help with the transition. So instead of saying, well, here's you go ahead and try and figure it all out, I've got lists of short lists of resources that I connect them, that they know that already has been vetted. Which makes life easier.
And that's where that trust comes from again, is firms, all those vendors get kind of vetted through that lens of who you recommend. So
Correct.
That makes sense. A couple minutes here, we'll just switch gears to some other questions on the personal side for people, again, to get to know you a little bit if they haven't met you yet. So we already talked a little bit about your background growing up in South Africa, and you've been married now how long?
Well, 35 years.
35 years. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
exciting. And you mentioned you had a 3-year-old son then. Do you have any other kids?
Nope.
Okay.
That's my one and only.
Is he local?
He is.
Okay.
He's married, and
Grandkids yet?
we have an almost 8-year-old. She won't be happy if I say she's 7. She's almost 8-year-old.
Oh, that's awesome.
This year,
So
in August.
the next generation is already there, and
Yes.
you're getting a chance. And it sounds like they're all pretty local, so you get to see them a lot. I hope.
Thankfully, 7 minutes from us.
That's awesome.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, very cool. What do you guys love to do for fun? What kind of keeps you busy? What are your hobbies and interests?
We are very family oriented. I mean, we kind of uprooted ourselves, so I think we kind of throw ourselves in a little bucket, but we're very family oriented, love spending time together, like being outdoors. Cooking is probably one of our most favorite things. It's just all hanging out. And
is there a
cooking.
South African dish that you love to cook, or something that's specific to the culture?
Any South African food is good
Yeah.
for us, but I think we've been here so long that we've evolved.
You've been Americanized, huh?
Unfortunately, yeah. But there's still your little go-to comfort thing.
You still have the accent, though, so I mean that's not going away.
Well, so what happened, quick story on my accent. I'm sure you've heard South African accents are much heavier than mine.
Yes, some are.
And
It's a cool accent, actually.
It's so beautiful. It's so clean and crisp.
I agree.
And fresh,
Yes.
right? So
Very regal.
I did have my British English accent, and I worked in nursing homes. When someone is in rehab, it is a very stressful situation for them. They just had surgery or a major healthcare concern. They're sometimes confused. They're dealing with so much.
Yeah.
And I would walk in as their therapist, and I would say, Dawn, we are going to walk to the bathroom. And they would go, what? And I'm like, we're just going to walk to the bathroom so you can go home. And after a couple of weeks, I said to my husband,
I would just think of Mary Poppins when I hear that. You know?
Right?
And who doesn't trust Mary Poppins of all people? I mean, come on.
And I bring the spoonful of sugar. So,
You even have the short haircut for Mary Poppins. You're like a modern day.
right? And I actually went home and I said to my husband, I said, this is wrong. This is not right. I can't do this to my patients. They need to, I can't be
Actually understand you.
stressor. I'm adding stress instead of helping them.
Right.
So I would literally go and sit and practice to lose my accent.
Wow.
So
Oh, I would have given you some consulting. The exact opposite. Let's just lean into it.
well, the good thing is if I go back home or I get with South Africans, I kind of revert back.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
yes, a
sense.
little.
Well, I guess it is important that your people actually understand what you're saying half the time. So
Yeah,
I can understand.
especially, they're hard of hearing and all that. That's like, no, that's not fun.
Yeah, that could be frustrating if they're always like, what are you saying again?
Right.
So a couple quick kind of rapid fire questions here for to test your speed on a couple things. So do you have a favorite book or author, maybe a seminar that you've attended that you feel like has made an impact on you personally or professionally?
So you're gonna really think this is crazy. So I do a lot of reading, audio reading more so these days. Listen to podcasts, go to seminars. I love Tom Ferry, all that type of stuff. But honestly, going just back, what I think kind of is the foundation of me and who I am. My all-time favorite book is The Notebook.
Okay. So you're a romantic at heart. Huh?
Yeah, and it's this little old couple,
Yeah.
So that honestly is my all-time favorite book, and from just a leisure perspective, and then my favorite book that I think created who I am is my gosh, I'm just drawing a blank now. The Power of Positive Thinking.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
It's a 1950
Norman
book.
Vincent Peale, right?
Yep, 1950s.
My dad actually had that book in his library. I remember as a kid, he was like, this is a book you need to read someday, son. I was probably, 11, 12 years old at the time.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen his church out there?
No.
Okay. I think it was he has the Crystal Cathedral out in California.
Oh, wow.
It was just ridiculously beautiful, crystal palace, basically,
Wow.
that he would speak at. But that's a classic book for sure.
Yeah, I was in high school, and my dad gave me the book, and he just said, you know what? It's all about the positive thinking. If your head's not in the game and you don't create that foundation,
Yep.
and that's
Got to first win the game here before you can win it out there, right?
Yeah, so I have to thank my dad for that. He introduced me to
Your
that.
background as an occupational therapist, so it's all about this first, right?
Exactly.
That makes sense. Do you have a favorite? Is The Notebook your favorite movie as well?
This is kind of crazy, right? I think my favorite movie is actually I love music.
Okay.
I love music, and I'm going to say this was ABBA.
ABBA. Okay. Yeah.
Mamma Mia. I love
Big music
Mamma
fan.
Mia. It makes me happy. It's just a happy movie to me.
My wife and I just went to the Les Mis show down at Straz. Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
Yeah, it's always a classic.
Yep.
The music there just hits you in the soul.
Yep, that and Phantom of the Opera. I loved the Phantom as well.
Yeah, I grew up more of an avid sports fan than anything else, but my wife has cultured me a little bit. So
Well, I'm glad she made some progress.
she did. She made a little bit of progress. I crept the door open a little bit for her to seep some of that culture into me. So,
Happy wife, happy life.
I don't like to admit it publicly very often, but she has got me to like some of those Broadway musicals for sure.
That's great.
So here's a couple. We'll wrap up with this. I always like to ask what I call the legacy question for people to kind of let them ponder for a second on what's most important, to them. And when you think about, when you're on that rocking chair one day and you're thinking about your legacy and what you'd want to be most remembered for, what do you think are the most important things for you that you'd want to be most remembered for?
And this is, I know it sounds so cliche, but there's just that I made a difference. I just want to be known for caring and always putting others ahead of anything else.
Yep.
Having a caring heart, a loving heart, and being true, being transparent, and someone that people could trust.
Very cool. Well, I barely know you, but I trust you already. So I enjoyed our conversation today. I really felt like I can feel your, like I said, empathy and compassion for what you do. And I can see why a lot of the senior community would trust you in a very important and emotional time for many of them in that process. So I think you're the perfect person to serve that niche the way that you have. And congrats on all your success. We didn't even talk about it, but over 14 million in volume, over 33 transactions you said last year, I think it was, which is why, of course, we connected with you and how we got you spotlighted as an upcoming rising star. So keep up the great work. You're doing a great job. And we'll put a bow on the episode with this. So if somebody did want to pick your brain a little bit about, serving the senior community potentially, or anything else that we talked about today, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
The best and easiest way to get in touch with me is really our good old cell phones. My number is 727-638-0501. Leave me a message or send me a text, and I will definitely get back with you. I believe that as a community, we all need to stand together. We're all in this for the same reason, is to help clients put that smile on their face. And, there's nothing, I still cry at every closing because I just feel such a satisfaction.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Is the difference that you make. So if anybody needs anything, call or text.
That's where the fulfillment comes in for doing the job, right?
Absolutely.
So that makes sense. Well, thank you for being here, Lorette. It was I enjoyed the conversation. I hope that the audience did as well. If you're watching live on any of our different podcast platforms, we end every episode the same way, which is with a challenge, right, to the audience. And that's to take action on something that you heard today that's going to propel you forward personally or professionally. Maybe you're somebody who's struggling to kind of identify your niche, or maybe you're finding some similarities in what Lorette's talking about, and you're like, you know what? She's doing an amazing job serving the senior community. That's a community that I also have passions about, right? And I want to be able to serve them in my local area. There's a lot that we had discussed today that hopefully you can take from, and maybe you have to have a conversation with someone like Lorette to pick her brain a little bit more on how she's done it and what she continues to do to serve them at a high level. Or maybe it was a trigger for you that you need to identify what your passion is, right? And what your niche is going to be. Because as I said to Lorette earlier, in my experience in interviewing these top producers, that is really where it starts with many of them, and becoming successful is deciding specifically who they're passionate about serving. And then, of course, creating your entire brand around that, right? And so if that's something you need help with, that actually is the first principle that we talk about at topproducersnation.com. We can dive into that with you if you feel like you just want to talk more about it and need some more help in that area. But take action, do something, check out the notebook if you have to, but take an action step to be able to move forward. And if you do that, then the time you invested in listening to this, watching this, is going to make it worth it. And that's really the objective of why we have this podcast in the first place. So we, of course, will see you on the next episode of Tampa Bay Real Producers. If you don't already subscribe, by the way, just click the button. That way you're notified every time a new episode drops, which is weekly. Every Friday, we drop a new episode. And check us out again at topproducersnation.com. We'll see you later. Bye.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Colon. I am with LPT Realty, and today we're here at the Real Producers event at the Whiskey Cake. We are talking today about how to be consistent in every market. I personally cover the Riverview market all the way until Parrish, Florida. And I enjoy working with the Real Producers because they highlight all the agents that have been working hard behind the scenes. Thank you for having us.